All right, folks, welcome on back here for this Tuesday morning's edition of Traders Talk, April 23rd, might I say. Great to have all of our students and members just joining us here. Let me just get the webcam up for them at least. Got Kathleen, Luis, got Margaret, Ray, Lori, Grant, Nicholas, got all of our students and members just joining us there in chat. And if you're joining us back on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, especially YouTube being at Cyber Trading You popping up on the lower left, you'll see there. If you're new to any of our streams, platforms, social media accounts, just be a friend, tell a friend, look to hit the follow or subscribe button. It goes a long way for us. It goes a long way for yourself here because, hey, we have a beautiful trade here to begin this Traders Talk workshop off with. This NIVF, man, I mean, this is obviously still pushing up right now. Phil says, good morning, like your shirt color. I appreciate that. Starting to get a little warm here. Start to dress the part. Little Floridian, Hawaiian-esque, right? A little palm tree on this, but nevertheless, at least, not about my shirt. It's about this trade, right? Let me ask for all of us here in chat. Let's ask Phil, Ray, Margaret, Grant. Who here got a piece of this NIVF trade so far? This has been a home run, an absolute grand slam, at least so far across the morning. So I'm out. I left some money on the table on this trade, and that's perfectly fine, unless if this goes up to like $5 now without me. But no, nevertheless, let me just ask our students, did anyone jump in on this trade NIVF from earlier? Because we'll have plenty of time to cover this. We'll go over a couple other stocks we've called out from earlier today as well. Brian says, one of our students here, longtime members, he says he's in from 180, killing it. Roger, there we go, another one of my coaching students here. He's in also, beautiful. I was on a couple coaching sessions earlier today, one pre-market, then one just before this workshop started. So I'll go over this trade. And I'll go over at least what we were looking for even from the morning session and from yesterday. But there was a bunch of other stocks. It was NKGN. It was the SMFL. You had the crypto stocks on top as well. So we're going to try and cover it all really quick. If you're new to Traders Talk, new to any of our streams or platforms alike, again, at Cyber Trading You. But here's my email address. I'll post it right here as well, popping up lower left as well there. And all of us obviously in chat, you can just private chat me. You can send me an instant message live inside this trading room each and every day. But for any of our new trial members, Josh at ctutrading.com is my email address. Let me know if there's any more extended trading related questions that you would want to go over. But we'll get to those in just a bit. This trade obviously is still pushing up now and might even get halted coming up here with one more little move like this. So, let's cover it from the start. We'll go over basically this trade really from pre-market session into the open. You can see, at least generally speaking, it ended up taking off as soon as the market opened up. I'll give you my entries on this trade that I had. So this was the stock that I started the regular hours off with. This was my first trade that I took after 9:30. I got in at 9:38. So I'll get my prices and all that for you here in just a bit. Let me show you the book map for the time being, though. Let's just show you level 4. We'll show you the heat map here for the time being, because this morning I didn't really take the time to chart or line up too many levels or stocks even. This NKGN, my cryptos out there. I was a little lazy this morning, to be honest with you. I didn't really take the time to plot any major lines or levels like I normally would. So here, what I will do is show you what happened once the market opened up, and there was a pretty distinct level for us to watch. In fact, well, to be honest, there's actually 2 distinct levels here on this screen that you should be able to see. So a little pop quiz because, hey, we just started off our phase 1 course right from the top of our education cycle again here for the month of April. But we did this back in March. And if you're a student back then, if you're a longtime student, if you've been with me in and out of coaching, you should know this here. So I want you to answer. What 2 price levels stand out to you on this page, on this whole program, on this whole screen that you see? What 2 price levels stand out to you that could act as a potentially big level, whether it be resistance or support? What do you got? Grant, Roger, Kathleen, got Alex, killed it earlier today too, Andrew, Margaret, Ray, Larry, Irving, all say 187 out the gate is the first answer. Yeah, right here, right? Let's zoom in on that actually. So this actually represented about 113 plus thousand shares. I think it was, 113 plus thousand shares out there at 187. So a big sell order out there acting as resistance. How long was that order out there for across the morning? Out since 4 in the morning? Since literally the beginning of pre-market trading alike. So you should know that should be a clear top for us to work off of going forward, right? Now that's the first of the 2 levels that we had. But let me fancy my book map the way I had it set just before. There we go. Pretty much the same thing. So what's the rest of us saying here? you ever say 125, when you look at not the heat map even, but it's more even the columns over to the right side of it, the CVP column here in particular. There was just a bunch of volume filled right off of like 160-ish here, right? Let me see if I can zoom this in better. There we go. So it looks a lot easier here on the eyes, just a larger discrepancy in where the volume is filled within the first few minutes of the open, from pre-market here included. There was just a lot of volume traded around this price, around 158, around 160, basically, you could say 159. So for me, I used that as my entry level on this trade, my first entry, at least on this position. So after the first 5 minutes, we're holding off. Fausto and myself were kind of like, screaming that from the mountaintops this morning because, again, we just came off our phase one, lesson 1 and 2 classes yesterday. And we were talking about that. Wait the first few minutes. So we're not just trying to jump in. But since we now have this resistance lined up here at 159, little iceberg now at 160 there, looks like for about, what was that, 17,000? To me, I thought if this could bust above 160, there's a good case for an entry, right? So that's essentially what happened on the first part of my trade. I jumped in at 161. I got out at 168 at the time, 940. Just I saw this big sell order pop up here. It didn't work out the way I wanted it to initially. I wanted this to try and make a move up close to 180 or 187 there, the seller that popped up from earlier. That was my kind of game plan. I wanted this to bust above 160 and try and make a move closer to 186, 187 here. But unfortunately, within the first 10, 12 minutes, that didn't happen right away. Big sell order popped up at this point. I got out at 168 on the first half. Then the second half, I got out at 160. So break even essentially on the second half of that trade. Now, I ended up taking a loss on this afterwards, so I tried it one more time later on, and this was a little bit later. What time was this? At 9:47. Was this the loss I took? Yeah, this was the loss I took. Okay, so basically it got choppy on me. I was still trying to follow this trade later on, and once it ended up beginning to push back up, it flattened out for about 5 minutes. Figured, okay, I guess if it's going to give us another shot to get up there, there's a case for a new entry. So I jumped in at 171 at the time, 947 and change. It's just flat. It's just flat. It's going nowhere here at the time, right? Let me ask us here in chat: Alan, Grant, Margaret, Scott, Steve, Irving, Larry. Of course, I mean, everyone here should know this, right? It's one of my catchphrases. You knew I was going to say this at some point. One of them. When a stock breaks through a big level, what should we be expecting shortly after? What should we be getting shortly after a stock breaks through a big level? It's a very generic catchphrase, right? Very generic. But big move, right? Well, once I jumped back in at the time, 9:48, 9:47, 17 seconds it was right here. Just I'm looking for a better reaction, a better push up at least to this, maybe higher if the stars could align. And the longer it doesn't, the longer we're going to get a big move just the opposite way. That's my thought. That's my kind of mantra. So I ended up taking like a 4-cent loss on this, got out at 167. And then it was really because this seller popped up. We had this sell order just move in size here down. And there were better trades at this point. Riot was moving better. Fausto was calling out Rivian. CLSK, one of the other miners. Palantir he had mentioned as well. I was more hoping for the pop. I just didn't get it, right? Obviously ended up breaking down, stopped me out at 167 here. All right, take a small loss, right? Now, afterwards, though, I ended up following this trade. I missed out on this bounce back up because, again, there were just better trades moving at that time in the morning. At 9:57 in the morning where I got stopped out, at 10 o'clock in the morning afterwards, you normally want to follow a stock that's closer to the highs of the day, that's still trending up. So there's no shoulda, coulda, woulda here. Like, oh, I could have gotten in at 155. Screw that. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of where could I jump back in on afterwards, though? Is there a big level for me to work off of afterwards? Well, a couple things happened here in this time. This iceberg order ended up laddering down even more to 176, to 171, even here to 161, I think. Well, that order, I think it got filled. Yeah, it actually did get broken through. It got filled. Well, I wasn't watching the stock at the time. So let me ask you then. Don't look as much at the heat map. I'll give you the hint. Look at the CVP column. Is there a new price level that stands out on the CVP column going from top to bottom? Is there a price level that shows a lot of volume traded off of it? May have been from consolidation, hesitation from earlier, but what answer do you have for me there? Irving says 158. Well, that's kind of one of the answers, right? That's one of two. It's a good observation. That is, an answer. So the one I'm looking for, the one I eventually took my trade off of, was 175, right? So once it popped back up, I was already missing it from this point, right? Maybe someone could have jumped in from the 157 there, Urban. But otherwise, 175, big volume filled there. You have your basically high of the day right at 78, 79. So you're thinking, hey, you know what? If this stock could bust above 175, then maybe there's a case to at least get up to 187, if not much higher. Because, well, hey, that iceberg got filled earlier here at this point. So once it ends up busting above 175 and I guess above 180, what's our next real resistance after that? $2, 220, 250. This thing could be off to the racetracks. So I was watching this as we were finishing up our audio broadcast. I was jumping on a coaching call just right after this. So I jumped back in on this trade, my entry. Let me get it to you. 1022.22 time or price 176, and that was basically it. So 1022.22, basically as it's pushing up, right? So my thought was, hey, if it's not going to make that big move, then you better set your stop break even. Actually, at this time, unnamed, of course. We never mentioned him. I was chatting with a couple of traders earlier today, and one in particular, I was going over, just a different stock, right? Different trade. They took a bit of a loss on it, and it was actually at this point I was giving them the advice that I'm giving you right now here as a group, and myself. I was giving myself this advice as I was typing to this trader on this stock. So for my own position here, I was telling myself and via telling my trader, once you're up on a position, once you're off to a decent start, you're up 10 cents, 12 cents. Okay, we're looking good. Well, at a minimum, at an absolute bare bones minimum, you need to make sure you move your stop up to exactly break even. Remember, we talked about this 2 weeks ago at this point, like the whole Masters conversation, the golf conversation. Going par on a hole is good. I'm going to probably keep saying that going forward. Rolls off the tongue well. So saying that here, once this moves up, I've already made some money on my morning. I took a pre-market trade earlier prior to all this. All right, not like my best start, but we're up. If I start off here and I only make 5 cents a share instead of 20 or instead of 30, is that horrible? I probably could have managed the trade better, but it's money that I made. It's money that I didn't lose. So here at a minimum, at a bare minimum, once I jump in from 175 level, I'm setting my stop basically to that price as it ends up beginning this move up towards 87, obviously above that. Now here, this ends up doing something pretty cool because thankfully for my trade here as well, after I got in, it ended up holding this price, 187, surprisingly, as support afterwards. It basically filled this as support. So for as long as this order was actually out there across the market, it was out there for how long? 5 hours, 5.5 hours, basically nearly 6, from 4 a.m. to nearly 10 a.m. Eastern time. Why is that order out there? Why? We have to put ourselves in the shoes of like a 6-year-old, right? Why? No, I mean, like, why is that order out there? Well, at first, we're treating it as resistance, right? That's a sell order that we treat that as real. For anyone that thinks that's fake, you're probably very paranoid as a human being. I apologize for saying that, but that's just the case, right? Treat this as real. Now, when this order gets pulled, we'll treat that as real also. What happens when the floor gets pulled underneath us? Stock's going to drop. What happens when the ceiling gets pulled above us? Well, there's a better chance for the stock to move up. The selling pressure gets relieved, gets kind of just diminished right away, right? So at that point, you're hoping for this pop. But hey, if this was resistance and this is popping above resistance here, we'll say basically in this sequence, breaking above this price 187 right here. It goes up as high as 196, I think. Okay, so it's about like a 9-cent pop, 8-9 cent pop. The larger the pop, even better, because it would be even easier for us to answer this. But when a stock breaks above resistance, resistance should then become what at first? Support, right? Margaret, Steve, all quick to the punch there. So I shook under it, but it did my classic little under and over, held right above 187 after, and certainly this thing just continued. So at this point, one thing that I'm privy to is that the more any stock goes up, we saw it just yesterday and last week, obviously, with like Lisa and all these other stocks. But big trees fall hard. What goes up will come back down. And the stock popped for us, I guess, back yesterday. And before that, maybe in the pre-market from like 80 cents, 75 cents. Now today it's at like 280. This thing popped up pretty high. So I don't need to be perfect with my exit. I just need to be satisfied with the profit that I made. And what I mean by that is, all right, well, I'll just keep taking this level to level. This obviously popped here at this point. It broke above 187. That became support for me at first. All right, let me ask us, what's our next resistance above 187? Without even looking at the heat map, you could probably assume for a certain price to act as resistance above the price 187. Above the price 187. There we go. Steve, Ray, right there. Focus on your round whole number levels, right? $2. So you know what? Hey, if this can flip 2 into support over time, then I'll move my stop right underneath 2 and say, all right, let's give that a fighting chance. So I was watching at this point, seeing what would happen, and thankfully it did play nice. It continued to move up. Now I got out of this trade though. I took my money and ran at 240. I'll show you the exit right here, right there at 240. The time on that was at, obviously you saw the candle, but I'll get you the second. Um, 3 seconds after 11 o'clock. It was right before, obviously, I started Traders Talk. Wanted to make sure I wasn't multitasking, but otherwise it was at 11 o'clock and 3 seconds exactly. It was right at 240. Why 240? Well, just to sell underneath resistance. Not only do we focus on whole number levels, but we'll focus on 50-cent markers here too, like $2.50. So I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to be happy with my profit. If I can get a pop up and take a quick exit and this thing tanks after, that's fine by me. Now, not only that, but also this is where I started to kind of go further into the monthly chart, or rather daily chart. But I don't know what that was. There we go. Let's turn this even into like, what is this? I had the 20-minute before. I had a 20-minute chart kind of poking at. Let's just play around with this for a second, because I'll show you. It'll be a little bit easier on us here. Let's see if we can go back as far as we may. There we go. So the stock obviously gapped down quite a bit back on April 3rd, but I felt like over time this would begin to top off at resistance, or at past support rather. So I was looking at pretty much right there. It had like a smaller rounded bottom going up. So I just figured around that area it would begin to build off as a top. If not even here, then maybe even this exact downwick here, this exact low. So I was just trying to play it more conservative at that point, because it was already off to a really nice run at that stage from the 175 level. If I can make 25 cents on a $1.75 stock, that's a hell of a profit, because this was on some extra gas. So, doing this on even 500 shares would be a decent profit on 25 cents. 1,000, obviously pretty solid. 2,000, even that much more. Now, for new students here, this is great, because I was asked this actually on a coaching session yesterday. It wasn't really meant for Traders Talk, but since I'm kind of in my head internalizing it, it comes in handy here. I was asked by a student yesterday, on just stock XYZ, just random stock from yesterday. I forgot. Asking, Josh, how many shares would you trade of this? And my answer is, well, I traded it. I showed them the exact position I took on it. But it was just a matter of saying, what I trade is not the same as to what you should be trading. And that doesn't mean that I trade big size and like I'm like mega millionaire. Look at me. No, like at most on a cheaper stock like this, I'll do 2,000 shares. That's if I'm like extremely confident about the position. That's if I'm not trading anything else. That's if I have my full undivided attention towards this stock, where I could risk maybe a little bit more. But just because you have a larger account size doesn't mean that you should be trading a lot of shares, let alone any more than just like a couple hundred as a new student. I mean, most new students even just do 100 to begin, right? So for anyone that might have like good account size, good flexibility, you could trade certain stocks. That's great, because at least you'll have more options to focus on as far as different stocks out there, price range, right? But as a new trader, If you're doing this on 100 shares, you're doing your homework, you're doing your job, you're doing what you should be doing. If you're doing more than that and you feel very confident, we're not holding your wrist. We're not holding your wrist as you're trading, right? So, we can't force your hand to trade less, but we want everyone to start off small, start off slow, because you are going to lose at first. You are going to take losses, and you have to learn emotionally, or how to block those, losses out emotionally, and just really move back onto the next trade. So for my student that I was chatting earlier, again, unnamed, you don't know who it is, where they are, just saying, I know that they are very skilled as a trader. They are very confident within their own abilities. They said that themselves to me. And I said that to them. I said, I know you're a great trader, and they're going to get back on the horse pretty quickly. But that's where ultimately you need to make sure that you're setting your stops on your trades. Because for as good as this trade looked, and this trade still is looking pretty all right, there's still higher lows showing. If you feel like there's continuation on this stock, that's one thing, but the stock's already up 112% today, and it was up from end of last week. So, just to kind of show you the ugly side of a lot of these moves, look what happened to Visa, right? Look what happened to our good old friend Visa back from last week. I can obviously go through the whole bunch. I can go through all of our stocks from, just yesterday, from the last few days even here, but and the common theme is what goes up comes back down, right? You do stock like TIRX from, maybe a week or two back. This thing was a disaster, right? We could do our good friend PHUN, fun, right there. So, they're not meant to swing trades, and especially for something that moves up as much as it already has, you're playing with fire more often than not, right? So, that was kind of the trade I wanted to start off with, the NIVF. We'll come back to that at the end, probably see if it holds up. I started my morning off in pre-market. I was on a call with one of our other traders as well, and we were looking for a move up. It was on the NKGN, and then after that, I was doing a little bit on the AGBA. But moving up right now. How about that? And my levels are still here. This wasn't really prepped up for the market open. This was coming off my coaching call with my student Manny. So, had a nice pop right at 8 o'clock. This trade NKGN. We weren't as focused on it prior to 8, but it ended up making a hell of a move after. So, hey, when a stock breaks above resistance and it runs off of it, one more time, folks, Margaret, Kathleen, Skip, Alex, Daniel, all of us here in chat, stock breaks above resistance. Resistance initially should become what? We know it, right? We know the answer. I know you know the answer, but we got to just basically hammer it home, right? Because that's what I'm focused on in the heat of the moment. So earlier here, at what price levels do we have the two orange lines still going across the page? Still going across the page here at this point. At what two price levels do we have those orange lines still going across the page from left to right? There's a couple orange lines that disappear. They get pulled from the book. But there's a couple that still are out there. At what price levels do we see those at? 169, 178 says Ray, right? And Margaret agrees pretty much within that same vicinity, right? Henry too. Steve, pretty much like all within ballpark right there, right? 170, 178. So at first, this ended up making a pretty good push. It ended up making a strong pop, and I thought that there was a good case to see resistance get flipped into support. So at this point, it was more off of like 178, but essentially this ended up breaking under, then back over. And at this point, I ended up jumping in at 177. Like I kind of crashed into my two lines that I had there. Mine was at 175, I believe. But basically, for those resistance lines that were there, my hope was for that to get flipped into support, right? So missed out on the first pop because, well, we're not just jumping in to just jump in, right? I think that's kind of horrible management of your money, right? So, maybe there was some news that came out. Maybe this is just a whole pop and drop move here. I think that we know the answer, at least at first. Well, it goes to show if this isn't going to make a big move back up, if the Bulls aren't going to resume control from 178, 170-ish area, it's not going to make that big move back up. It's going to make a big move just the opposite direction. So we got out at 185 on this trade. We took a little money and ran. That's what I started my morning off with. It just didn't have the feel. It just didn't really have the feel. Oh, Well, that's true. It didn't have the feel. That's of course true, but it's also one other glaring fact. Well, hey, resistance becomes support. Support becomes resistance. Well, for anyone familiar with the VWAP price, this broke under the VWAP price, the smoother white line, as support. Support became resistance, and we wanted it to get flipped back into support. Manny and I were looking for the pop back up. We were hoping for the better move. You can't always get what you want, and this ended up pulling right back down. So we got out at 85. We took some money and ran. It was a decent out in the grand scheme of things, right? If it's not going to make that big move up, big move down. All right, so that was kind of MKGN there briefly, but over time, I took a loss on this one as well, though. This was later on, so this was also at this point. I'm not going to just show you the good and the very good. I'll talk to you about the ugly and just the losses. Otherwise, this one wasn't as ugly, but just it was a 5 cent or 6 cent loss. So I jumped in on this. I get my stocks mixed up here in my order bar. I got NKGN, NIVF. My dyslexia tripping me up here. All right, so NKGN. This was at 10 o'clock, 10:12. So I got in at the price 178, 175 as well in the second half of my entry. So that was right here, basically popping up. And my issue on this trade was I assumed it broke above my resistance line, my horizontal line, but this was still retesting the VWAP as resistance here. And given how long it took for it to retest it from earlier, I should have known better. Like genuinely, like it's like, oh, that's easy to say in hindsight. Yes, absolutely. That it's as bright as day now. It was as bright as day after I got in, once I took the loss. Because if that's such a big level, we should be seeing a pretty big reaction off of it. And given how long it took to retest it from earlier, that's where you should expect resistance. The more times it tests it from this point, okay, there's a fighting chance then, right? Let's see what it's doing now. Still under the VWAP, but maybe we come back to this trade later and I can make the new breakout later on. But point being, like, that was not a good entry. That was a bad entry. It was good in relation to my horizontal price level, the 177 area. But with the VWAP here, I should have known better. So this was a 7 cent loss. I ended up getting stopped out within like 15 seconds. So knew pretty quickly it ended up pulling back. All right. So hey, that was my morning altogether. A few good trades, a few small losses or losses otherwise. And let's come back to that. What was it? The NIVF, just to show that briefly. Is that still holding? It's like kind of teetering under 250 right now. So lower highs, lower lows, not surprising, especially with 250 acting as a decent rounded bottom level here. I zoomed in on this area. So, support should become resistance coming up. We'll see what happens later on. Really quick, I want to jump to some email questions that came in, though, just earlier this morning and overnight. So give me a brief moment here. All right. So also keep in mind, we have a bunch of emails that came in, but normally not as many compared to typical Traders Talk because we have class. Right. Yesterday we started the phase 1 stock course, continuing and finishing it tomorrow, and then phase 2 Thursday, and then Friday, and then phase 3 the week after. So there's a lot of opportunity to not just learn and go through this with me, and not just hear me, but to ask questions and for me to help you out and assist and follow up on different questions that you have. So I know I already answered a bunch of students just yesterday, even, but let's get to some different questions that may have come in. All right. So I will tell you what, a couple of these emails, unfortunately, students get back, and I love it, but students will get back like, hey, Josh, I'm not going to be able to watch Traders Talk. I'll catch it on recording later on. Here's one from Ray. Here's one from Ray that came in. Simple question from, just for right now, less experienced trader. I feel like all of us are less experienced or were less experienced at some point in time or another, right? So Ray asking, could you please explain how could you please explain how tight one should make their stops? Should it be a percentage or should it be a dollar amount? Great question because it ties in with what we were just talking about here. So let's talk about it right now. 250. Okay, this isn't really the best spot here because, like I'd said earlier, this trade's pretty extended. It's already made a big move. It's trading a lot more volume compared to what it does on a day-to-day. This will probably die off. But Okay, let's just pretend that you think that there is going to be a case to see this 250 resistance get flipped into support and then it pops. Or even if you want to play it better, like this looks like a better little chart top here, breakout, resistance support. Okay, let's even say 230 coming up, if that could be support later on. Notice the kind of catchphrase I was saying to our students otherwise, right? When a stock breaks through a big level, you get a big move shortly after. We're not trying to hold on too long in terms of time. You should know pretty quickly in terms of time if the stock is going to make that bouncy, more reactant move that you're looking for or otherwise, right? And again, I'll give you the greatest hits here today, just since we're in traders talk. But we talk about this like difference between a stock and a car is that when you take your foot off the gas pedal for a car, it just stops. It just stalls out and then it just goes sideways, right? Or just kind of flattens out, just stops moving. That's something like nothing. But otherwise, it's to say that for a stock, for a trade that you're buying, well, when the volume dies off, when the foot's taken off the gas pedal, it doesn't just die off itself. It doesn't just flatten out and just stop. It goes in reverse for you and tanks. So that's where here you want to set a tight stop in terms of just pennies per share. I don't focus on percentage. So there are some folks that do. I just focus on like let's say if 231, 230-ish is going to be a support, and if we jump in just mere pennies above it, we want to make sure that our stop level is set just pennies under it. Give or take like 4, 5, 6 cents under this level likely. It depends on what may pop up just on the order book over time. Maybe there's some new iceberg that pops up at 223 for 700,000 shares, just making it up. You set your stop underneath then at that point, right? Underneath that price. So it's always a case by case situation for the stock that you're looking at. But case in point, you do want to set your stop pretty tight underneath, not above, but underneath your entry level. Give your level like a chance. Have faith in the big volume level or the big level that you had entered from to begin with. So, set it underneath it and set it like a few pennies underneath it, some pennies underneath it. The more expensive the stock is, then you're going to have to give it more leeway. Stock like AMD, stock like Nvidia, obviously you're not just trading it by the penny. So, just that's just a very simple rule of thumb to kind of utilize. The more expensive the stock is, the wider the stop likely set. But simply put, you got to make it pretty tight in relation to your level. Maybe if it's off the low of the previous bar or previous dip point, you set it a couple pennies under that low. All right, that's one thing. But for traders that come from a swing trading perspective or are more long-term portfolio-based, investors, we'll even say not just traders, you're going to be more inclined to wait it out more. With day trading, that's not going to be to your advantage. That's the key. So you should know pretty quickly upon your entry if you're going to be on the right side of the coin or not. I like that for Steve. Steve says it's more like an airplane, actually. It's no gas and you go down. That's a good way to phrase that. I like that, Steve. That's a good way to phrase it. A couple more questions coming in from Ray. Maybe I'd answer these just a moment ago. Kind of brain dumped to you just there. But Ray says, is it variable based on the trade? There we go. And if so, what factors determine that? So do you use a trailing feature? Personally, I don't, but that's, not bad. I mean, just there are certain things I don't use that if someone already comes into CTU with and they're already managing their trades well with that, then all the more to you. Trailing stops, bracket orders. Those are the two I'm talking about. So for those that have like the OSO, the OCO orders, please use them in the way that I want you to use them at least. Make sure that you're setting your stop very close under your level. Don't set it further under your level. That's the only thing I would suggest. But if you happen to use like a bracket order or a trailing stop and you don't seem to use them, as long as you're managing your trades pretty tightly, conservatively, that's what matters most. So for me, I've just learned that trailing stops, it's been more of like a love-hate thing. Where's Lita here? Shout out Lita. Love-hate relationship with trailing stops, right? So it takes you out too early, and then otherwise it's a great security blanket, when the stock really begins to pull back and stops you out ahead of time. So it's good in that aspect. OCO, OSO, the bracket orders, to me on TradeStation, I just never grew into it. I just thought it was an extra few clicks to set it up, and speed kills in this game. It's everything. So I want to make sure that I'm quick to set up my orders and I feel comfortable doing it at least. So I just decided to not use them. That's all. That's pretty much it. Comfortability is a big part of trading. So, just because I use certain things or don't use certain things, that doesn't mean that you need to use it. Now, I will say level three, level four, that's different. I would suggest for all of us to be using at least level three, if not level four, for the trades that they're taking. But yeah, I'm talking about like VWAP price. I'm talking about like certain other smaller things I mentioned in classes. But um, all right. So email from a trader. I'll just mention unnamed for now. I just want to read it here first. As someone who is in the process of learning about this style of trading, I'm at that place where I'm thinking about moving from paper trading to actually doing trading with real money. Okay, cool. So I had to read it first. I didn't know if it was a concerning email or not, right? I try and, so no, this is a good email. It's for my student Phil here. So he's looking to move from paper trading to doing trading with real money. What would you say is a good dollar amount to start doing live trading with, so that I can get my feet wet while continuing to learn? Very good question. Actually, very timely because we're heading into May. Why is that important? Because of this. Let me ask, just straightforward. Who here is underneath the 25K PDT rule, pattern day trade limit rule? Who's underneath that? Don't need to say how much you have in your account, but just is anyone underneath that 25K limit? The answer is going to be a lot of us. There's going to be a decent number of us, so don't feel shy. Um, you are limited in the number of trades that you can make basically week to week. If you're on a cash account and under 25K, basically you can day trade throughout the week, but it takes a few days for your cash to settle. I think a couple days for your cash to settle. That's always been the case. Now, very surprisingly, I actually got an email last month about this from TradeStation. I have a buddy that works for TD Ameritrade, like basically Thinkorswim. It's TD Ameritrade, and he mentioned the same thing to me. He verified it. So whether it's FINRA or the SEC, that part I got twisted, but one of the two, they made a new rule coming up effective May 23rd. I'll look that up on my phone, just from the email I received. But I think it's the very end of May. I think it might be the 28th, in fact, May 28th. But now, hey, if you're under that day trade rule limit, whatever, well, it actually is going to take one less business day for your funds to settle. That's extremely important in terms of being able to freely day trade or at least do more, right? So, Scott right there says a game changer. Absolutely. This is the email. I'll read it to you from TradeStation. T+1 settlement for equity transactions starts May 28th. This goes across the board, they're saying. Faster access to funds. You'll have quicker access to your funds from sales transactions. Basically means if you are day trading, let's just say, for instance, I'll just say not in a video, not in a video. Let's go back to our good friend NIVF. On NIVF, the cheaper $2 stock like this, if you're doing 1,000 shares, okay, how much money is that? That's $2,600. Okay, so let's say if you have like a 10K account and you trade $2,600 on this position here, and you day trade it in and out same day, not holding overnight, it will require basically just the overnight settle for those funds to be cleared again. It's the same way that options trading is working out right now, where it's T+1. So for me, when I trade options on my Webull platform, if I day trade, let's say $5,000 worth of my equity balance, or just cash balance, whatever. And if I close that position out before the end of the day, the following morning, I have access to those funds again. That is what I'm thinking is going to be the case here. It's the same thing, T+1. So just to mention, for anyone under that PDT rule, this is a game changer. Like Scott said, I fully agree. It's the exact way I'd phrase it. This is a huge game changer for anyone that doesn't have as much funding to trade. Hell, if you're on like $5,000, $2,000 account, this is a huge game changer for you because, well, hey, truth be told, on a $2,000 account, probably shouldn't be trading $2,000 on one trade, and that's it. You should divvy that up into a number of different positions. Are you going to make a lot of money trading small size? Probably not. No, but that's the way. At least you're going to be able to have more, bullets in the chamber, right? More shots for you to fire. So that's important as a trader because hell, if I only had one trade a day to take or only two trades a day to take, and that's it, um, it's very tough to be profitable consistently. You could be profitable here and there, but to do it weekly or basically every day, it's very hard. So now with this T+1 rule, it makes it much easier, very easy to do. Now to answer this question from Phil, though, what would be a good dollar amount to start doing the live trading with? Well, hey, if you have the chance to be above the 25,000, I'd suggest for you to be, because at least you know at that point you're a pattern day trader. You don't have to worry about that, that rule as much with the T+1. Not only that, at least, but you have better ability to just freely take losses in and out. You don't mind taking a -2 and just getting back on the horse after. So that to me is a big part. If you have the ability to possibly do 30,000, 35,000, then you're in good positioning because at least at there, you're giving yourself a very good cushion to work with. I would not be expecting to lose that cushion money and fall to 25,000 over time, but at least it gives you a really good safety net to say you don't even have to think about that, right? It's an afterthought. Uh, Now, again, when I say that number, for anyone that can't fund an account with 30, 35,000, don't think that you need that much to be a trader here. I just mentioned that, it's going to be T+1 in about a month and a few days. So by May 28th, there's going to be a huge game changing policy that affects every broker, every platform, at least from my eye, every direct access platforming company, Thinkorswim, TradeStation, Schwab, Webull, all of those major platforms alike should be able to go T+1 there. Henry says interactive brokers gives me access to my money immediately. So that could be perhaps that could be perhaps, I don't know if that's Canadian rule, Henry, or if that's also because perhaps you're on margin. Maybe that's as well the case. So aside from like the PDT rule, it could also be margin. Um, Henry says I just do 10 shares on anything until I get more consistent. I think that's the rule just as a new student joining CTU, just small size in general, right? It could be 100 shares, and that could be small for a cheap stock like this. Is it $200 worth of money putting into a trade? So 100 shares on this is not big money, but hey, what if this stock drops $1 overnight and you're not managing the trade well enough to get out beforehand? There are traders that have that happen. Trust me, these stocks get crushed over time, overnight, the next day. So if that happens, even on 100 shares, you feel pretty bad about yourself after. You might still say, all right, that's not a lot of money. Okay. But you don't feel good about that trade after, right? So that's where at least we still want you to trade small and we want to make sure that you're setting your stops at least more than anything. All right, so let me know if you have any follow-up questions on that from Phil M. And then right here, really quick, just still going through. So the trade's still holding up here. How about that? Building back up a little bit, trying to move back up towards the little area here, 280-ish we had. Little chart level there. I don't know if there's a major iceberg as much exactly at that price, but it seems like just a chart top for right now. And then really $3, your next whole number level from there. Question from Mike. Not sure if this question is appropriate, but how is a short trade executed? Absolutely appropriate. It's the place for to learn about that. But also, might I say, I got to whip out the PowerPoint right now because otherwise, I got to say, phase one actually coming up next month. But also, we did this back in the month of February. We did this class 8 in the phase one stock course, gave you a full 60-minute on shorting, everything that you need to know from A to Z. And then not only that, the phase 2 curriculum, we go a lot further into shorting just with, interpreting volume live. And then just really here, these two classes are basically mini live market trading sessions, like mini phase 3 classes. So, if there's a down market, if there's some good short trades there, we definitely follow up there. But phase 1, class 8, we're going to do that live next month. And again, back in February, the recordings, phase 1, lesson 8, we did that there. But let's just kind of briefly, go over one or two, see what's moving out there. I will say we're working in a pretty good market right now, pretty good up market for the time being. SPY ended up making that gap fill perfectly and then broke a little underneath it, might I say. Broke underneath my 497XX that we were talking about last week. And, now at this point, obviously, on a strong bounce back up. So I feel over time, we're just going to only see a little bit more of this push here across the SPY and just everything else. But Let's see if there was maybe a decent trade from yesterday, from the day before. But really, as far as executing a short trade, easy for me to say this, but it's the opposite as to what I look for in a long position. So let's go to Tesla here. Tesla bounced today. It pulled back yesterday. Okay, this could be a decent short. Okay, this could be a decent one. This could be decent yesterday. A decent little trade, nothing too big, but trend here is down, right? Tesla came out with news yesterday or over the weekend about their prices being slashed for their cars, for their FSD, for the self-drive. Um, I didn't think the stock would drop off as sharply as it did there pre-market yesterday. So, it was a good trade while it lasted on the way down. We have big support here at 140. We had that, I remember, about like 17,000 shares in pre-market sitting there. Well, I will say that we had a nice little level here, basically at 142. Now, later into the morning, the stock ended up making a break under that price 142. It rebroke under it like it did here. Now, let's just expedite this, answer here because it's really to say if this is a big level and here we'll treat it as support. So the more times this stock could nip this support level, break under, the more times it could test and break this level in a smaller concentration, I'd be led to believe this will make a better drop. Not just, it'll fall off, but it'll make a big move on the way down. So, the key with any trade is knowing your level first. We're just saying this is our level here for this example. But as this is dropping down, you're not necessarily trying to short it above the level. If you missed it from the previous level, you got to wait for this one now. So, really, if you know where your support is here, you got to make sure that your order is set up. So, hey, if it can break under the level, you'll look to try and get it at 141 and 90 or so cents, right? But you want to have that set up before you're even seeing the level break. And that's something I'll do a lot more in the phase 2 course coming up, even this week. And like I said, going into the next month or so, we'll do that. But, that's really where for any trade, long or short, you got to make sure that your order is set up and you're prepped up for it in advance. There's plenty of trades that I'll take, and it's because I have the preparation behind it to take it. There are a couple trades here and there that do fall into my lap where, thankfully, with the experience I have, and just I do this every single day of every single week of every single month of the last nearly 10 years. Think about that. You grow to become very reactive and very quick. So, yes, there are some cases where I see a stock, and from my experience, I am relatively quick to pull the trigger. I don't always like to feel that way, though. I don't like feeling that way. I feel a little impulsive and dirty at times, and I just jump into a trade very quickly. Now, if I set my stop to break even, then I'm doing everything I need to be doing. But that's where I just say for a long trade or for a short trade, we'll talk more about this in the phase 1 course coming up in phase 2. It's just to say that here, you got to know where your level is first, set the order up, and then wait for the level break afterwards, right? Nicholas says the emotional roller coaster is difficult to get over. Well, that could be in general, right? Is that just in general in terms of just the speed of day trading? Because as a trial member, that would make sense for me to hear because this is all very fast moving. And whenever there's a fast moving market, it brings the emotion out of us, right? Because we want to make money. We're a little caught off guard with how fast it's moving, maybe a little overwhelmed, maybe a little afraid about losing money. Nicholas says Tesla is just a bad news machine right now. He says, yeah, I feel like anytime Elon says something, obviously Tesla makes a move. But that's a good thing as a day trader, at least, because if you're experienced with, not just us, but day trading alike, if you're used to these faster moving swings, Tesla's awesome because it is volatile, but it has iceberg orders. It has easy to see levels out there on the heat map. Fausto makes a big point about that, even on our social media, posts that we do each and every day. He just made one recently for Instagram. So definitely make sure to like that and just, you'll see right here, a couple of easy to see iceberg orders out there at 146 and 145. Big support here at 140 on the bid. But hey, everyone has their own cup of tea. So there are trades that I don't do well on or have not done well on over my experience here, and they're 100% tradable. Just for some reason, they got my damn number, right? That's pretty much it. So if Tesla's volatility kind of spooks you off, then that's fine. There's plenty of other trades out there. That's all. All right, so a few more questions coming in from chat right now. I had one or two more emails, I think, so let me just get to those here briefly. But otherwise, from Alan asking, when you're setting your stops, do you use limit stop or just a stop? So that depends, I guess, on how your platform has it laid out, like their order bar. On my platform, TradeStation, they have it laid out so it specifically says stop limit, stop market. I use stop limit, like always, stop limit. So notice that stop price just illuminated that field and limit price here. So with a stop limit order, it gives me better ability to catch it at a certain price range rather than just getting it filled at whatever price at market. So, that's again something, not going to keep popping this up going forward, but one more time, talk about this even coming up on, well, tomorrow, losing track of my weekdays. Tomorrow's Thursday, or no, tomorrow's Wednesday, shit, on the 25th. There we go. On Thursday this week, the 25th. Today's Tuesday, Josh. Let's remember. Thursday coming up on the 25th, we'll be doing the Phase 2 stock course for the month of April. So restarting the curriculum. And really here, lesson 2, setting stops, taking profits. I'll go over that a lot further. I don't remember. Today's Tuesday. From Barry, can you make that's to a trader Henry here, just kind of chatting about debit credit spread trades. Well, with options at least, well, until now at this point with the new rule coming up at the end of May, the advantage with options at least was the fact that you had just basically 1 day turnover for your funds compared to the 2 with stocks that we had, but they're both going to be the same now come the end of May. So all right, so let's just go really quickly back to email. I want to finish up before we wrap up at 12 p.m. I do have a hard out actually coming up. All right, so really briefly, kind of make sure I jump off actually. So from Susie, oh, no, that is not Traders Talk related. How about that? I got back to her actually via private chat on that. So I think that we're pretty much all set, folks. I think that we're all good to go. Let me just double check social media here. Got Patrick joining us here on social media, perhaps answering support a moment ago. My apologies, Patrick. Hope you enjoyed. But otherwise, though, folks, hey, for all of us in social media, we are going to wrap up here. Let's head back to NIVF, I guess, before we do, and do one last check in there. This damn thing's still making higher lows to a degree, right? Still making higher lows. Is it going to actually nip that 280 level over and over and make that push up to 3? I don't think it will. That's my prediction. I genuinely don't think it will because I thought 250 was going to be that top. So I'm impressed with how far it's moved up already. And I would have to be strongly convinced to have otherwise. You know what I mean? To have thoughts otherwise there and reverse that thought. I think that this can flip 280 into support, push over 3. I mean, looking at the daily chart, there's not much historical data after 740, but that's where I was even thinking of a top off around the 50s earlier. So here we are now. We'll see if this can push up a little bit more later on. But folks, we're going to jump off for the time being. So a couple things, social media. Hey, once more, at Cyber Trading You. If you're new to our streams, new to our social media, streams alike, just YouTube, Facebook Live, etc. at Cyber Trading You across all ends. Just make sure to follow, hit the subscribe button. Otherwise, if you're interested in joining us inside our live trading room, we're going to resume our commentary just later on this afternoon, even just for a full hour and a half remaining. But, join us. Scan that QR code on the top left of the stream, top left with your phone. With Gary, how about this? Catching the YouTube chat right now. So really quick from Gary. With stop limit orders, they need to have a 2-cent cushion, else you will have your order skipped over, left at the train station. That's a good way to phrase it there, Gary. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more at that. That's head on. Perfect with that, actually. And we'll talk more about that even in our classes coming up later on this week. But for Gary, Patrick, all of us on social media, again, last call. If you wanted to join us inside our trading room, we look forward to having you there. Just scan that QR code. We'll catch up with you later on this afternoon. But for all of our students, Lawrence, Margaret, Grant, and Bell, got Ray, Allen, got Steve. Not Ray Allen, the basketball player. You got Ray, then Allen, right? Oh, geez. You got Steve, you got Henry, you got Barry, Kathleen, Nicholas, and all of us here. Otherwise, I'll talk to you all coming up later on today as well. Take care.